I loved working for like the big company, but I was selling stuff that was making people really unhealthy. People are buying super unhealthy food with food stamps, and this is a big part of the business model. It was just like really hard for me to like see how really unhealthy products were contributing to really poor outcomes.
If you truly want to decentralize science, you need to fund science or execute science that is accessible to the average person, right? That's in crypto.
What was amazing to me was when I went onto the pump.science website, I was like, wait a minute, there are like these worms that are being tracked with AI and streamed, and you can actually tell when they die because they stop moving, and it's being tracked by AI. So it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is decentralized clinical research.
If you can't use a blockchain, if it's not actually going to help enhance your life or something that you're doing, well, then what's the point? This technology is meant to be used and it's meant to be accessible.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of DeSci Pilled. I'm your host, Ryan Bethencourt. Just a reminder, we're going to be talking about lots of topics across the crypto and biotech spectrum. None of this is either financial advice or medical advice, right? This is very important. No injecting yourself with biohacker remedies. If you do, great, I love it, but we never recommend it. So I've got three incredible guests today. We're gonna let them introduce themselves. Our focus is really going to be DeSci, longevity, and Solana. Handing over, maybe actually, Rebekka, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh gosh. All right. Well, I wasn't expecting to go first. But I'm Rebekka. I have a long, varied history within fine arts, but then academia and doing my PhD in anthropology, art, and Buddhism that helped me understand the perils and all of the awful things that are really, really broken within the academic system. And so when I got in first touch with DeSci in 2022, thanks to the Molecule team, actually, in Berlin, I met them at NFT Berlin, and we had a little booth next to each other. I was running something called NFT Club Berlin, and they kind of expanded my mind in terms of what was possible. At that time, I wasn't able to do anything on ETH because I was a poor artist and academic, and it wasn't accessible. But I'd been big fans of them for a really long time. And in the recent year, a little bit more, now that there's a little bit more interest in Solana, I am just so incredibly excited to see all of the progress and especially get to watch closely the pump.science team that we have here today and help support them in whatever way I can.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Rebekka. And today you are working with the Solana Foundation, right?
Yes. So actually, I'm currently in the Solana Foundation office, headquarters in New York, in their podcast studio, hence the nice purple lighting. I am doing ecosystem growth and community development and events for the New York ecosystem. The last 2 and 3 years, I've been focused on all of Germany. But now, since there is a lot more changes and interest in the U.S., we're over here to support the American crypto renaissance.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Rebekka, and thanks to Rajan Toli for hiring you and bringing you on, and obviously starting things over in New York for Solana. Jillian, you want to go next? Just give a little intro on yourself and what you're doing now.
Yeah, definitely. That's a tough act to follow. And I too also thank the Solana Foundation for bringing Becca to us. She's been such a blessing. So Jillian, I am with the Pump Science team. My background, I guess like I feel like backing up a bit. So I started out in university. I actually thought I wanted to be a pharmacist, like way back when. And I did 2 years of pre-pharmacy in school, and they set the big book down of all the drugs that I was going to have to memorize. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think this is going to work for me. So, after doing 2 years of that in school, I switched over to business and decided I would have an impact in like a different way. After a meandering path in consumer packaged goods, so I actually spent some time of all things at Domino's Pizza at their corporate headquarters I did an internship there, and then I actually spent a couple years with Frito Lay and the PepsiCo family. And it was super interesting because I realized in both of those jobs that I loved working for like the big company, but I was selling stuff that was making people really unhealthy. And like one thing in the consumer packaged goods side that was wild to me was in the US there's like food stamps, and literally you could tell when people got their food stamps because that was actually how the potato chips, that's like when you sold the most volume, which was like such a crazy thing for me to wrap my mind around. Was like, oh my gosh, people are buying super unhealthy food with food stamps, and like this is a big part of the business model. And I don't know, it was just like really hard for me to like see how really unhealthy products were contributing to really poor outcomes. So I was like, okay, wait, this is actually getting further away from the roots that I started in. And I actually jumped over to big pharma. So I spent some time at a big pharmaceutical company, and I worked in their marketing department. And everything I did was on bringing new medications to market. I helped launch an oncolytic, an oral oncolytic product, and then I worked in neuroscience, bringing a migraine product to market. So worked firsthand developing marketing strategies for an oncolytic product. I did it for we called them HCPs, healthcare professionals, doctors. Developed a go-to-market strategy for the whole sales force. So the sales aid that the reps used when they went in to talk to the doctors, I helped develop, did the launch meeting, all that stuff. And then actually went over to consumer marketing in pharma, which was super interesting, and worked on a migraine drug. And yeah, got to see what goes into consumer marketing. You know, there's a reason why people are walking in parks in a lot of pharma commercials, because every single thing, every single piece of material that we created, you actually submit for review. And anything you depict imagery wise can be an overstatement of efficacy. I mean, it's a um, it's a really big machine. And so yeah, working on the big pharma side and seeing how the FDA process works, how PDUFA works, getting a final label, all of that stuff. It like was really cool, but it's really was like an intense, long process. And I was like watching the world outside of that system move so fast. And it was crazy to me, like, wow, this stuff takes like decades to get to this point. And it was honestly frustrating, like really frustrating. So yeah, I got really interested personally in crypto, not, because of like one Lambo, but like the infrastructure, right, that it enables. And so I jumped over to the DeFi space, worked on some various layer ones and decentralized protocols. And after doing that for a few years, learned about DeSci. And I was like, oh my goodness, this brings everything that I've like been really passionate about together. And this is like the world is hungry for this solution. So jumped over to Molecule and have been with the team now for just about a year. And that year helped bring pump science to the world, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, kind of a meandering path. But when I look back on it, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And by the way, I worked for pharma too. I carried the bag. So my
You
first
carried
decade,
the bag?
I used to work for
Wow.
Pfizer. I worked for
No
Pfizer and Merck.
way.
I used
Yes.
to say I slang drugs until one day
Yes.
I was working out in the gym in New York. I used to live in New Jersey and northern New Jersey, and I said it right in front of the former chief of police. And I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" I was like, "I sell drugs." And the chief of police looked at me and he was like, "You do what?" And
You're like,
I was
come again? I'm sorry.
I was like,
Classic
"I'm in
mix-up.
pharmaceuticals." My hands are up. I was like, shirt off in the gym, right?
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. But like you
Yeah.
get it. You get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
mean, props to you that carrying the bag's hard. It's really
Yeah,
hard. So
by the way, real hard.
real hard.
I used to cover some areas. I still remember like going to some areas, like it's tough. Like these doctors are doing God's work in some of these neighborhoods, like really rough neighborhoods where people are like kind of aggressive and attack the doctors. I had one patient near a large lady nearly attacked me. She was not having a good day and I was bringing in free drugs and she like decided she wanted to like try and attack me. It was like I have like these crazy stories. Unfortunately, it was I wrapped up my career in pharmaceuticals very quickly in 2001, right? Which
Okay.
was, the Twin Towers and all that other sort of stuff. So it was like a crazy time around that time. So, and then I moved into developing drugs and all of that. So, first decade of my life, I developed drugs with big pharma and stuff. So So Benji, so now you're going to help us bring your background together, and then what Pump.Science is. So tell us about yourself, right? I'm a PhD dropout. I know you're a real PhD, so that's good.
Me?
So yeah, aren't you a real PhD?
Hell no.
Oh, okay. So all right. Well then, all right. I thought you were a real PhD. I'm a dropout. So
he's a PhD gen.
D-gen. PhD gen. Oh, okay.
PhD and
honorary PhD. Yeah.
So you were finishing your pharma career in 2001?
No. That was the beginning of my pharma career.
Okay.
I am older than I look. I look very young for my age, but
I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm very well preserved. You know, vegan diets.
2005.
Yeah, what's that?
Do you know what I was doing in 2001?
What were you doing in 2000?
I was starting kindergarten.
No, stop.
Oh my God, I'm Methuselah. I'm Methuselah.
Wait, what?
You just kept that to yourself.
Benji, this blew my mind. Okay.
Everything has been derailed now.
All right. So tell us your story. Tell us your story. What your background, and then Pump.Science, because I know we connected on Pump.Science in the early days, right before launch.
Way before launch.
I remember you were just a D-gen that reached out to me, and you were like, "Oh, I got this thing going on. I want to do DeSci on Solana." I was like, "Awesome." Like, who is this guy? And I think you had a milady, right? So which we now know is, Communist Manifesto according to Vitalik. Right?
Yeah. Anyway, it kind of looks like me, which is why I have mine. Anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, they're fun for those that are not. So we have a mixture for this audience. Like, we have crypto degens, we have scientists who are probably very skeptical and like, what is this DeSci stuff? It's a bunch of scams. It is not. It's real science plus the liquidity layer of crypto. We're trying to do something real here. But yes, so for, I'll try and explain stuff both for scientists and sometimes for crypto people. When we go into like the details of like the science, a lot of crypto people love science, but they don't like, a lot of crypto people are like anti-vaccines, which I find the nuttiest thing ever. Because it's like, we don't die because of vaccines mostly. I get it, COVID was forced on people, but like the COVID vaccines was forced on people, but like, we mostly don't die because we have vaccines. And I get into arguments with crypto people about this all the time. So stuff like that.
Totally. But I think it's also important that like people who are skeptical of the whole crypto industry see that there's like actual culture and like fun to be had there. And like, it doesn't just have to be corporate. Like, it's not just a technology. Like, there's also like a whole ecosystem in here that's actually super fun to be a part of. And it's
really fun. I mean, trading JPEGs, NFT. I mean, it's all meme coins.
The absurdity is the fun part. Like, everyone's like, I don't get it. It's like, well, mess around. Like, you will get it very quickly how fun it is. Anyway, so like, yeah, I think the background is like a combination of like science and business. So like, I was obsessed with genomics from the get-go. I know it's a weird thing to be obsessed with at a young age, but like I grew up down the street from Illumina, which is like one of the OG genomic sequencing companies. And so like,
and by the way, just so that everyone knows, like Illumina really was one of the pioneers of sequencing the human genome, right?
Totally.
Like before Illumina, there really weren't great technologies to sequence the human genome.
It was super
expensive.
Scale. It like wasn't going to become a widespread technology because the cost was too high. And Illumina really developed next generation sequencing and brought the cost down to like below $1,000 per genome, which was like really kind of one of those magic numbers that really allowed the whole technology to distribute. And yeah, like I'll bring that back in a bit later, but like, yeah, so, studied bioengineering in college and did an internship at a biotech investment bank. It was like Wells Fargo in their life sciences department, got to do like M&A transactions and a few follow-on like public offerings in biotech, and absolutely loved it. But what I found out was like my favorite part about it was like reading the papers behind the biotech companies that were like the foundational science. And to me, it's like all the finance pieces were like interesting, but not as interesting as the scientific part. So anyway, the last week of the internship, we got to do whatever we wanted. And I'd had a friend who, like, in the basement of our fraternity, it was like, you should check out ETH. And I didn't listen to him. And ETH was $30. This was, May, 2017. And now it's like end of summer. Nah, it's just relax. I was like, 20.
But by the way,
Anyway.
Benji, this is very sad. I remember when Vitalik, before he launched ETH, I was a mentor for Peter Thiel's 20 under 20. And so I remember Vitalik pitching it, and I didn't understand it because I was like a biotech maxi. So I was like a mentor for like biotech 20 under 20 founders. Unfortunately, some of them didn't do so well, but Vitalik was talking about like a decentralized database. I did not get it at all. At all.
Well,
So
now
it was, it was cents. ETH was like cents. So I kicked myself 10 times over for that.
Anyway, anyway, we all do.
Yeah.
And, it keeps us humble, which is important. But yeah, so anyway, for that last week of that internship, they said you could study whatever you want, do whatever you want. And I just was like, okay, I have a week. I'm just going to study crypto and blockchain. I'd never really like sat down and like, gone through all, the Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum yellow paper, like actually tried to understand the technology. And whereas I had written it off as magic internet money, that just didn't make any sense. I finally, I would say, got it for the first time. And I realized how actually aligned it was with my like very personal libertarian beliefs, and like the separation of money and state. And I was like, oh my God, this is the next freaking revolution. And so, yeah, like it had always been like, kind of a side interest, like, from an investment perspective. Since then, luckily, I put all of the money that I made from that banking internship into ETH, which was like a great move. And then, fully round tripped it that cycle, of course, par for the course. And anyway.
You got to have round trips that make you feel sick when you look back on it.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, wow.
Keeps you humble.
It keeps you very humbling. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, like post college, again, was like still interested in genomics and like realized I didn't want to do anything like finance related for the time being, wanted to go back fully deep into science. I joined a company that did oncology genomic sequencing. So basically what that means is like precision medicine was starting to get pretty hot, meaning they realized that like cancer wasn't just one disease, but many diseases. And the way to figure out which tumors to give what drugs to depended on the mutations, like basically the genetic alterations that were, specific to a patient.
And Benji, just one item for people to really think about cancer. Cancer's gnarly, not just because it's cancer, but because of the fact that a lot of people think of mutations like, oh, a mutation on the genome. No, some of this stuff is like bits of chromosomes attached to another chromosome, and like, these like 2 or 3 chromosomes that are like all mutated, like wild stuff.
Like, I don't think what people like fully understand is that cancer is basically its own evolution within the body, right? It's like there's survival of the fittest, of like your body going rogue on itself, and like a certain piece of your like organs basically going rogue and trying to be selfish and take all the resources and mutate itself and change itself and continue to evolve in order to selfishly like take the rest of the resources from your body. And that's actually what kills you, right? It's like typically your body's like very in sync, right? And it's like it all works together and it's a highly regulated system. And then a certain parts of it is just like, no, I'm going rogue. And it's kind of like you said, like chromosomes will, there's this one type of mutation called chemothripsis, where basically all of your chromosomes will just shatter and then recombine in different ways. It's insane. Like anything that can go wrong basically goes wrong, right? They're mutating, they're trying like, and checking out.
I mean, the amount, the variables there, there's no way to model it on any conventional computer. That like we need quantum computers, and we need like quantum computers from like the spacefaring future to even understand the complexity that's happening in just that one cell.
Yeah,
like
it's
crazy.
Insane. It's insane. And basically it was Illuminous technology that enabled us to basically scalably and like cost effectively sequence all these patients. And actually, it's funny, like Jillian's boss at her big pharma company ended up joining the company that I was at.
Amazing.
Hilarious. So we actually had the same boss. It's crazy how that came full circle.
That is really funny.
It's really wild, actually.
Yeah, when we first met, he was like, do you know this person? And I was like, do you know that person? And he was like, yeah, it was wild.
Absolutely.
My old boss.
But, basically like what the company that I was at was like, yes, we were doing all the sequencing. It was awesome. We provided a super valuable service to patients. But what I continuously saw was like we had trouble, like we were trying to predict how they would respond to certain treatments. And we always had a tough time following up with them and getting data. Like, the treatments that we predicted they would respond to, did they actually respond? It actually started to become an incentive problem to get the data back, right? And find out and like actually build a full feedback loop. So we can make predictions, and then it was like, we don't know what happened.
And then the patients
Right.
disappeared, right?
And I realized like it was totally an incentive problem, right? And I was like, even if anything can solve this, it's like smart contracts, crypto, like incentive engineering, mechanism design, right? Like this is what it was built for. And a lot of so I would say like prior to DeSci, there was kind of this like evolution of a bunch of different like crypto projects that were trying to incentivize people to upload their medical data or their genomic data in exchange for tokens, right? Like that was the idea. And they all kept failing, every single one of them. And it was just like super discouraging to me, because to me, like that was like, I could see that being the issue and thought that this was a viable solution, but none of them worked. Anyway, so I kind of sat on the sidelines of like crypto blockchain intersection. And then I joined a venture capital fund that Ryan is super well connected to. So I did biotech VC. And, I just wanted to see all of the cool startups that were coming out, potentially at this intersection. And then literally 2 months into the job, I got Molecule's seed funding round deck come like across my desk. And I'm like, I've never had this happen before, where it's like, I just drop everything and just consume every single piece of content on a subject in like a span of 2 days. So like in 2 days, I had basically gone to the bottom of the ocean of what DeSci, like
you were like nerd swiped by DeSci, right? You're like, what is this?
I just went straight up to like from the surface to the bottom of the rabbit hole in like 2 days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like I was totally red pilled. And I think the moment where I was like, I need to go do this was when I realized that like this was about the time that like Beeple NFT was like sold.
Yeah.
And I was just doing the math in my head, and I was like, okay, Beeple NFT, $69 million. Humira patent, $150 billion. I was like, the DGens are going to go crazy for this. They're going to go bananas. And then I was like, if there is even a 0.1% chance that this works, like, gotta go figure out how to make it happen. And so dove into Molecule, started there on product. Have been iterating there for a while, and then had been cooking the idea for Pump.Science for a while. Hit up Ryan. Ryan was one of the few people that was like, DeSci needs to be on Solana. It has to be on Solana. And I'm like, yeah, it has to be on Solana. And
because you and I were just degenning on Solana. Like I just loved using Solana. Like after having used ETH, which by the way, I did use ETH. I really liked the culture in ETH. I hated the like, the cost of transacting on mainnet was killing me, and I hated using like the L2s. It was just horrible experience, right? And for someone that cares deeply about like, consumer, like thinking about products from the consumer's lens, it's a terrible product for a consumer. And so I was like, the future's not there. It's just not there.
The usability has to be perfect, right?
Seamless. An iPhone, like seamless. And it just wasn't there, right? Like it just wasn't there. And Solana just worked. Straight out of the bag, just worked. Raj and Toli, in their genius, made a product that was monolithic and just worked.
Totally. It just worked. And it was such a pleasure to use, and it felt like the internet. It was so natural, right? And anyway, so like I'd been shopping around the idea of Pump Science to a bunch of people. Got a lot of negative feedback, honestly. Like a lot of people were skeptical. And Ryan was my strongest data point, because like he was one of the few people who were like either were both crazy or like he got it, and he encouraged me to send it. I was working at Molecule at the time. This was like for those like who know what Pump Science is, it was completely outside the strategy of what we were working on.
And Molecule, just give everyone an idea. What is Molecule? What's Pump.Science, right? For those that may not be as familiar.
For sure. So Molecule is basically an IP tokenization framework. What that means is there's kind of these two worlds for money. One is like fiat, and the other is crypto, like digital, right? And fiat is minted by the state, and crypto is minted by code, right? And so the thinking with Molecule is, what if you could on-ramp intellectual property from the fiat world that's enforced by governments and states into this digital world, right? And have this like seamless digital way to share ownership of inventions, right? That's what Molecule does. It has built that entire legal...
And to tokenize it, right? And to tokenize it. For those of us that are excited about the tokenized future that's coming, right? We've already seen this where we're seeing large TradFi firms tokenizing equities and securities. And the equities are coming as well. I know on Solana they're coming, and I'm sure Becca's going to be able to tell us a lot about some of the interesting tokenization that's coming. So that's tokenizing IP, intellectual property, right? Which has immense value, as you were saying. Like the biotech patents have huge value over their 20-year lifespan roughly, and putting that on chain. So that happened on ETH, right? So ETH really was the original innovator in DeSci. And then what is Pump.Science? Like for those people that have not been part of it, I've loved it. It's been thrills and a roller coaster ride is an understatement. So what is Pump.Science?
Yeah. So the type of research that Molecule's technology had enabled the funding for was very much at like the frontier, both like scientifically, like it was like pushing boundaries, like funding frontier science, but also is at the frontier of the understanding of the average person, right? Like science is meant to be innovating at the frontier. The problem with that is if you truly want to decentralize science, you need to fund science or execute science that is accessible to the average person, right? That's in crypto, right? If you just had a bunch of PhDs that were in crypto and they could, understand it very quickly, maybe you could fund that type of science sustainably. But our thinking with Pump Science is, look, if we actually want to decentralize the ownership of IP, we need to make it accessible to people. We need to be running science that people can understand. And so the thinking was, look, everyone is a longevity patient, right? Everybody dies. Everybody hopefully wants to improve their life on a day-to-day basis. And if their life is improved, then extend their longevity, right? I think everybody at some point comes to terms with their mortality and is like, I want to live for tomorrow. And so how do I keep that going? And so I would say if you're thinking about how do you find science that is the most accessible, you build toward longevity because it applies to the greatest number, right? There are rare diseases. Only some people get cancer. Only some people get heart disease, but everybody is basically a longevity patient. And also from an accessibility perspective, if you test a drug on, anything, what is more understandable than animal alive, animal dead, right? It's just so everyone's got that, right? No, very few brainwaves are required to clock that. So, if we want to bring more people into DeSci, we have to do accessible science. And so the thinking with Pump Science was to do that. So, and I think at the time, Pump Fund was getting an insane amount of activity. And it was just showing the product market fit that launching new tokens had and building communities, right, around what started off as memes, right? Yeah. And so the thinking was, what if we can build such communities around longevity interventions, right? Mm-hmm. And, basically leverage that, activity and excitement to fund the research rather than doing fundraisers, from just the trading fees, be able to fund the entire research pipeline.
And Benji, you blew my mind. I remember when we first talked, when you said stadium science, actually making science fun and interesting, right? Because unfortunately, for those of us that love science, science has a massive problem. It's boring. Most of the time, science is super boring and it just puts people to sleep because, understandably, scientists are very methodical, but they're not usually entertaining. And so, then stadium science happened, right? So Pump.Science, the big vision was, okay, allow people to bet on longevity treatments or buy meme coins to bet on it, do, however we want to call it. And so what happened?
Yeah. So, yeah. So Paul, who's the founder of Molecule and Bio, was like, you can build this crazy freaking idea, but you can't do it with the molecules dev team. Like you have to go get a grant from the Solana Foundation to do it because it's so crazy. We just, we don't want to risk, the company's strategy on it, which is so fair. Like it was crazy. And so very fortunate we did get the Solana Foundation grant. Very, very thankful for it. And that was kind of like the buy-in moment of the team a bit, to like let us build a prototype. And so we didn't have time to build like a whole on-chain protocol and the fundraising piece. All we had time to build was like a data streaming protocol, right? And so, Becca, was it built when we met in Berlin, or was it still just an idea?
So you guys came to me and you're like, Rebekka, we really need devs. Like really need devs, like right now. Like this is really urgent. Breakpoint is coming up. We have like 4 weeks before we are on stage and have to ship this. They're like, please.
4 weeks? Was that 4?
Something like it was insane. And you're like, I need the Solana devs, and I did everything in my power to connect you with the team that you ended up building it out with.
Crazy.
So I like to think that I at least had a helping hand in those chaotic weeks.
Are you kidding? Like
heavy hand.
Heavy hand. Like the reason that we like survived and made it. So, okay. So met with a few of the super team folks, mainly Becca and Solana.
And by the way, for everyone listening, this is the founder experience. This is how building a company, building things in the world just is. It always feels life and death. You get there by thread, right? Yeah. Always.
And so anyway, they came to the Molecule office. I pitched them the idea, and I have a picture of all their smiling faces, and they loved it, and it honestly energized me to be like, okay, at least someone else is crazy enough to think that there's a minuscule chance that this can have any sort of traction. And so Becca introduced us to the builders team. They're a dev shop. They're incredible. And we got the Solana Foundation grant, I think, inked 2 weeks before Solana Breakpoint. So we had 2 weeks to build a prototype. Literally, I think it was 14 days. And so we got data from Aura Biomedical, which is a contract research lab in Seattle. And they run drug tests on C. elegans. They're these tiny worms. And our thinking was, let's stream the data and launch coins on Pump Fund. And just and basically the one token, one compound. And, we'll stream the experiments and see if anyone has fun, riding this wave. So we launched the tokens 15 minutes before Paul's talk, announcing the project.
But by the way, I remember that time. I was there refreshing to see when it would go up, because I was I want to buy some tokens. So I had my soul ready, and I was like, all right, I'm going to buy some tokens. And I was like, where is this? Is this a scam? Are we?
Anyway, so it was the first idea with Pump Science is we'll basically at each market cap threshold, we'll unlock the next experiment, right? And so we were debating what should the threshold be? Should it be 5K? Should it be 10K? Should it be 20K? And I remember us being 25K might be too high. It might not hit 25K. Let's do 20K. So at 20,000 market cap for the tokens, we started streaming the experiments. The tokens bonded, meaning they graduated the bonding curve on Pump Fund in 10 minutes. And within the night, both of them hit about $1 million market cap.
Which was insane, by the way. I remember seeing it, because I bought some, right? I was like, oh my God, this thing is running. So I bought some, and it kind of 10x'd or something. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. And so I was in Singapore at Breakpoint, and I was like, I'm going to go to sleep. And I remember the next day I was like, oh, it's dead. All right.
It's dead.
It's not a rug, but it died, the momentum died out, right?
It died out,
so,
but there was a spark there. And I think that's the important piece. Is people were interested in science. Degens were interested in experimental data, and they got it, right? They were like, what is this worm battle royale game? We went from 0 to 400 Telegram members. We were stoked. Finally, we could get people to properly care about science. They were like, oh, a worm died. Another one died. They were doing the things that we hoped they would do, right? And they were actually bringing to light data before we even saw it. And so anyway, this was at So it was happening in Singapore. I was here in the US. And so like I had stayed up until 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And so like at a certain point I just like crashed out. I just like I couldn't take it. I was so tired. It was like an absolute adrenaline rush, like passed out. And I woke up at 2 p.m. to like frantic calls from Jillian. Like frantic calls being like, you need to get up.
Wake
What
up.
was going on? What was going on, Jillian?
Oh my
What was
gosh.
going
Well, first of all, I mean, it was so crazy because like, and I remember when Benji called me with the whole like C. elegant idea and was like, you
the
can
wormies, the wormies.
the wormies that
Yeah.
are as big as an eyelash, those wormies. Like, I remember when he called me about this and he was like, this is gonna sound crazy, but if this isn't it, I don't know what is. And I was like, okay. And he told me and I was like, oh my God, I think you're right. So when what happened was Paul has his talk. Benji stayed up all night to like get everything ready and make sure it worked. And then the data starts streaming. And to your point, like to Benji's point, he literally crashed. Like he couldn't go any further. He had stayed up for like 36 hours. Jillian taps in, is like managing the Telegram group. All of these people are like coming in just in droves. And it was like one of those things where neither of us were at a break point. And so we were both like, like we couldn't feel the energy in the room. We could just see the like, the engagement that was coming in. And I think that was the hard part is like you couldn't read the room. Well, the part that like for the initial Euro and Riff, what happened was is we actually took like a 28-day, 30-day experiment and compressed it into 9 hours. So the experiment is going at like these were already run, the data was already QC'd, which we thought was really important for like what you didn't want is like data streaming and it'd be like, oh, we need to recalibrate the experiment. Not good. So we had the data, compressed it, and it was going to run over 9 hours. And so at some point, I'm realizing when all these people are coming in and I'm trying to manage this community that's being built in the trenches, like it was the trenches. And we didn't have like any, bots to help, get
I remember,
crap
Jillian, I
out of
remember all the
Telegram. It
scammers.
was literally,
I
was like,
remember all the people speaking in Mandarin. I was like, what is
Yes.
going on? There was like
Yes.
thousands of people speaking in Mandarin. And I
It
was like,
out of
what's going
control.
on?
They were like, Jillian, manage it. And I was like, oh my, this is so unmanageable because you would get one out and it was like whack-a-mole. It was just unreal. And so then like, I mean, imagine getting that. I would hardly call it under control, but like, I don't know. We survived. It was trench warfare. But then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, the experiment is going to end in like 20 minutes. And I just kept being like, Benji's he's going to wake up. Like he's going to wake up and the clock's ticking down and everyone kept being like, what's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? And I was like, we've literally built to this moment. Like, what is it was one of those realities where it was like, what is the plan? So I started frantically. I was like, I'm going to wake. I don't care what it takes. Like, I'm going to wake this MFer up. And it was just like over and over and over. And I will never forget. He finally answers. And I was like, I think I said something like, wake up, we did it. And I just remember him like, I could hear him being like, what? And then he like looked over and was talking to someone in the room and he was like, we did it. And like, I'll never forget like this whole moment playing out because it was like I don't know, the purest, like, oh my gosh, like we did it moment that's seared in my brain. But then we had to figure out really quick, like what was next. And that was something where like, all of a sudden we had a community. All of a sudden we had token holders. All of a sudden we had an idea that then it was like, now what? And so to figure out like in an instant, what is the plan? Like when we say pump science was born in the trenches, like it was literally born, formed and hardened in the trenches, like right then and there. And that's when we started building for moving forward and like really saying like, this is going to be something. We're locked in. Let's make it happen. And yeah, next came something that I don't think any of us could have imagined, which was the flies. But when we unleashed the flies, I mean, we unleashed the flies.
Talk about that. So, and by the way, for those people that are curious, go to pump.science and check out the videos. So what was amazing to me, as a participant, really, like as a supporter participant, was when I went onto the pump.science website, I was like, wait a minute. There are like these worms that are being tracked with AI and like streamed. And you can actually tell when they die because they stop moving, and it's being tracked by AI. So it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is decentralized clinical research or preclinical research. And this is like, the idea was so big. And then when it moved on to the flies, I was like, and honestly, I was like, you know what? I still want to support the project. Bought some tokens. I think we were at like a 20K market cap or something. I was like, I want to support that because I like the idea, right? But then something honestly pretty magical happened, right? So what happened next when the fly experiment happened?
Yeah, so I think like the important piece that Jillian's talking about is like, you know, being born in the trenches is you find out who your real supporters are, right? You find out people's motivations very quickly. And I think, yes, so the tokens, you know, pumps to $1 million market cap and then all the way down to like 10, 15K.
Yeah, it's a rug. You know, people are like, it's a rug. It's like, I remember you both going, it's not a rug. We're still here.
We didn't buy any tokens. We didn't sell any tokens. Like,
the team had no tokens.
No tokens. Like,
none.
If it sold, like that was you. Like, you know, talk to everyone else.
Yeah.
But there was like a small community there that remained through. I mean, it wasn't zero, but it was 20K for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, back to Jillian's point, like, to be dead honest with you, like, we had built toward that experiment and to see what would happen and to determine whether it was worth continuing to kind of build upon. And the answer was yes, given that initial interest, but we didn't really have a strong plan. Like, there wasn't like this grand vision, right? It was just like, let's see if people will be interested in this specific, like, you know, type of experiment. And so we did all the hard work, basically, of like the bigger vision, designing the protocol, building all of the data engineering after that. And luckily we had a few supporters that like bought on the way down who were like, no, I actually believe in this. And a lot of those supporters are the ones that helped us go viral once we had the fly experiments going. And so, yeah, basically between, I think, so Breakpoint was like September 20 something, maybe 21st. And yeah, basically between then and I think it was like beginning of November, we built all the tech to support fly experiments. And those were going to be fully live streamed. So we're at, like Jillian said, we took the worm experiment and we wanted it to be in like basically the time that like Breakpoint was going on. So that was like 9 hours. But we were like, you know, that we're kind of committed to like trying out live streaming experiments. Like if we can't continuously keep people interested in experiments that are happening in real time, this won't work at scale. So proper live stream experiments started growing the flies, like literally like hatching the flies, setting up the tubes, and building all of the data pipes.
And by the way, just to remind everyone, this is to see if the flies would live longer with this compound. Correct. Right? So exactly. The simplest experiment possible. How long do these flies live versus the controls, the ones that didn't have the drugs? Right?
100%. Yeah. And the reason we chose the lab to work with that we did, it's called Tracked Bio, was because going back to your point, they're using AI and computer vision for everything. There's no human intervention. And I think that's deep with like the philosophy of crypto, which is like code is law, right? And so I think we wanted to apply that same kind of thinking toward the experiments, right? Can't manipulate it. It's all code. There is no person like counting the flies. It's just computers, right? Working their magic and, you know, like making
just
it
code.
kind
I
of
love it. Science tracked just by code.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, like we set up lifespan experiments in flies. So, you know, both compounds extended life in the worms. The question is, you know, the next order of experiment, like, you know, can we replicate the data in the flies? And so we set all the experiments up, and then was DevCon Bangkok? Was it DevCon?
That was when CZ turned up, right? That's when the heat turned up, right?
When he turned up, turned it up.
CZ, Vitalik, and like Binance Labs set up a DeSci day, and the videos started going viral of CZ or Vitalik like holding the Vita DAO, and like Vita DAO is like a longevity DAO in the DeSci space, holding the supplements.
Which like that's a thing in and of itself. I mean, do you remember when we were like 2 weeks before being like, we need a label, and like designing the label for that bottle that went everywhere.
Oh yeah, literally
everywhere.
we all just swarmed. We were like, we need a sick label. Like, they're going to be shopping this around at DevCon. Like,
Had no idea.
And by the way, for those that are listening, there's currently ongoing experiments with VitaDAO compounds in pump.science that are being tested for longevity as we speak in worms still, right? If the worms experiments finished?
The worms are done, and the fly experiments start hopefully next Friday.
Flies is starting. Flies is starting.
But we've made an upgrade to the fly experiments. We can get into that.
All
I'm
right.
so fired up.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
But this birthing moment is still very much like, there's a moment where things just went insane, right? Like,
it was then, honestly. It was like, it was full meme coin hype cycle. People were looking for the next narrative. You have CZ and Vitalik in a room holding, DeSci Day, holding the freaking supplement bottles. There were enough breadcrumbs to connect VitaDAO to Pump Science, even though we hadn't quite launched new compounds with them yet, which we have started to do. But even at that moment, like the governance proposals were up from VitaDAO to like launch on Pump Science. And so there were enough breadcrumbs that basically connected us to them. And we were like, one of the few DeSci projects that had, taken the risk and built on Sol. And so we were, right place, right time. People probably came to our site, saw the experiments, like got it. And yeah, things went viral then.
And then viral meaning like, these tokens, RIF and Euro. By the way, I still remember Worm stays on for RIF. It was one of my favorite memes about RIF. Whiff and Riff, with the cute dog with the hat. And so, I still remember that. And RIF went up to 280 million market cap, right? Which is just crazy, right? Like crazy, like sitting there. I mean, the two of you must have been sitting there going, what? Because I was along for the ride and I was like, what just happened? I think everything has just changed for DeSci and science and crypto. I think that's what just happened because, I think all the other DeSci projects were really cool. And there were some, Bioprotocol hadn't launched its token yet. VitaDAO was doing cool stuff, but it was kind of a slower burn. And all of a sudden out of the gate, basically the largest DeSci project became Pump.Science's token, right? Fastest growing market cap, biggest community, like just insane, right?
It blew all of our expectations out of the water by many, many orders of magnitude. But it was like a great motivator that we were onto something and that we had to keep building, right? And that was all great. And then, market topped and, things started to come down. And it's been a crazy, I would say, like many, many more lessons learned on the way down than the way up, right? And the time that you go up, much, much shorter than the time you go down, right? And, you
basically speed ran the Gartner hype cycle. For those that are not familiar, the Gartner hype cycle is like, you get this amazing pump for new technologies. By the way, you can study this. This is studied in many new technologies. Everyone gets euphoric and then it crashes. And instead of it taking years, it took weeks, right?
And if price is any metric, right? Like we went from 0 to 400 million combined market cap for RIF and Euro, 7 billion total volume, and now we're at 5 million combined market cap. So like proper hype cycle, proper Gartner hype cycle, and we now find ourselves in what's called the chasm. In the Gartner hype cycle,
they often call it the valley of despair. It's like this is where people lose hope, right? And actually, crypto degens know this feeling well. Like for those of us that were around for $8 Sol, by the way, for those and for those that were around in ETH for the $80 ETH, right? Like there are these moments, and of course for the Bitcoin OGs who are all very happy, I'm sure, but who stuck around from cents to I guess now we're at like 85,000. We hit over 100, like 105K or something like that. So like this is normal for those of us that have lived in this crypto environment. But I mean, for scientists and for a lot of people, this is horrible, this feeling, especially when it's the first time they've experienced it. It's a horrible experience.
Yeah, look, I mean, like if you want to play this game and to like put your project into the spotlight and like give it a chance of success, you have to be willing to be able to stomach the other side of it, because no token goes up forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about this industry is like attention spans are short. And so, like as soon as people decide they're done with your toy, then, drop you and on to the next shiny thing. And it certainly feels like that at the moment. And we need to put in a lot of work and get a lot of things right to dig ourselves out of this. And we're 100% committed to doing it. We can talk about like the now, like where we are, like what's happened since that peak. But all I can say is like we are.
Let's do that. I was going to say, let's do that. I'd love to get Rebekka's perspective on, what's happening now, right? Because we're in a really interesting place within crypto. There's this saying like, there's no crying in the casino for the crypto degens. There's a lot of crying going on right now. The meme coin space has been blown out. Pump.science, still building, still innovating. And I want to talk about that. But Rebekka, what are your thoughts? Like, we've gotten here, we're in an interesting place. I love your perspective on, we're really focusing a little bit more on the Solana ecosystem as well. Like, what's happening in the Solana ecosystem? It is the largest, as far as I'm aware. I think 80% of all crypto transactions, I saw it earlier today, are on Solana, right? That's the vast majority of people. Like, what's going on? Tell us what's happening in the broader ecosystem.
There is a lot happening. But I feel like in terms of DeSci and Pump.science, in some ways, like it, as we mentioned, like can be really challenging to be sort of in the pit of despair, this valley of hopelessness. But seeing it from like a slightly removed perspective, in some ways I feel like it's, like going upstairs with a yo-yo, right? To really recognize how much has been built in such an incredibly short amount of time, and to be able to successfully execute this kind of really crazy experiment, not just the experiments themselves, but the social experiment, right? Especially in a time where meme coins and this whole meta that is kind of unfolded, unbeknownst to anybody. It was not expected that this was going to be the next hype within this cycle. And using it in a very innovative way and leveraging the potential research opportunities that can come out of that. I think there has been so much groundwork that's been laid in such an incredibly short amount of time, especially when we see, the time frame of like launching at Breakpoint and then early mid-November with everything with DevCon and this huge explosive growth that DeSci had. My timeline was all DeSci all the time. It was an enormous amount of the mind share at this weird little bubble. And the development of DeSci has been so slow moving for many, many years. And there have been some really incredible committed projects, Molecule and Bio being some of the most foundational. But it has not gotten the time or attention since it's really begun. And a lot of people kind of felt like it was this flash in the pan moment, but I feel in a lot of ways it cemented even just the term DeSci in a lot of people's minds. So even though it was this like weird explosive moment for a few weeks where everyone was yelling about DeSci, and I was getting so much inbound because a lot of people knew that I was really interested in DeSci from a lot of different angles. And I'm one of the few people within the Solana ecosystem in the background, like really trying to champion and rally behind it. And I've been running the Solana DeSci Twitter for a few months. Actually, I think we launched it also in the beginning of October or something like that. So it was around this time, and there was just so much excitement, just for what is DeSci and what can it potentially help produce in a really concrete, real world way, which is a really core aspect within Solana too. It's like it's always been this very consumer focused, usability emphasized chain, right? If you can't use a blockchain, if it's not actually going to help enhance your life or something that you're doing, well, then what's the point, right? This technology is meant to be used and it's meant to be accessible. And when you see the opportunity that it has for everything that you guys are doing at Pump.science or IP or data sharing or provenance or helping the publication crisis or reproducibility crisis. Like there's so many things that need to be really accessible and really fast and really cheap. And I feel like even though there was this strange hype and then crash, I really feel like there has been a lot of work that actually happened in the last few months, even though it's been a hard come down. And obviously with a lot of the hype came a lot of noise and scammy activity that has tried to shake a little bit of people's perception of DeSci. But there are these really incredibly ethically produced and very like projects that have really good foundation in science, and they're backed by people that are really legitimate researchers. And I think now that the noise is starting to die down, we're really seeing the development of some of these projects that have this proof of work that's starting to shape out. Also, Curetopia comes to mind. They're going to be one of the very first, or are the very first, BioDAO that's launched directly on Solana. ValleyDAO also bridged over not that long ago. So we are seeing a little bit more development in the space, and it's honestly, it's only just beginning. And I think Pump.Science plays a really integral role in this whole journey. And just watching you iterate again and again, while taking into account all of the crazy cycles that are going on and the fact that none of us have any idea what is going on or what it's going to look like. So that just being said, you can be insanely proud of yourselves, of everything you've built this far. And yeah, I know that there's been some recent challenges as well, but the fact that yourselves and others that have these really legitimate projects in DeSci are so focused on the longevity of it, that's what we're here for, right? So I'd also love to hear about the later stages of like how things have developed in the last little while.
Yeah. And for those of us that like kind of lived the journey, it was honestly, everything was amazing, right? The DeSci, like the incredible projects that came afterwards, as well as all the scams. Like I remember when people were just like launching molecules. It's like, hey, melatonin, we just launched melatonin. It's like, and I still remember, I was like, what? Why would you buy a meme token called melatonin, right? Like, it just, people were like, let's just, every molecule you can imagine, you can buy now, right? And it was just like, I remember there was one that was like a mystical token. And I was like, how does this have anything to do with DeSci? It was like, you will be blessed by these mystical forces and stuff like, so it's just, it was really funny, right? And one of my favorite was vitamin C, which is still hustling out there. They're called the tokens VC. I mean, they're a meme coin, right? But they talk about the benefits of vitamin C, and I think they're still active, and they're just like shilling vitamin C. So there's like all this weird and wonderful stuff, honestly, that you launched in the ecosystem. And so, I think what Rebekka's saying is 100% right. We'd love to hear like, okay, where are we going? Because I know we've been talking for a little while. Where are we going? What's the future for Pump.Science? And then we can talk about the future for DeSci, right? Like the opportunity of, really combining crypto and science. I mean, it's at least $1 trillion opportunity. Ethan corrected me, Ethan Perlstein, the founder of Curetopia. I've known him for many years. He corrected me. I was like, oh, the top, this is $1 trillion opportunity. He's like, Ryan, no, it's like the top 10 pharma companies are $1 trillion. Like, this is a massive, massive opportunity. And that's before we even talk about all the other areas of science that are going to be affected by decentralized science. So where are we going? Why don't you, Jillian, Benji, why don't you tell us?
Well, yeah, maybe I can start with like the end, like the long vision, like where are we properly going, and then Jillian, maybe you can walk it back and bring us back down to earth, okay, if that's cool.
Let's do it.
So I want you to envision a world where you're on the beach and it's really nice and sunny outside, and you're on a beach chair, and like one of those new robots that's coming out just like walks over and like it hands you like a drink, like a water,
like one of those, right? One of those,
exactly. And
right there, that's it.
And it hands you like your drink of choice, and then it hands you like basically a pill bottle, and it's just longevity medicines that have been continuously optimized by AI to improve your lifespan and just help you chill on the beach for longer, right? So I think it's like we see this world in which and I think this aligns so much with like the core philosophy of Solana, which is just accelerate. But it's like accelerate toward what, right? I think, like in AI, it's like what are we optimizing the AI for? Like what is it actually going to do? What are the applications? We want to align AI with our life extension, like an our life betterment, right? And that's not going to happen unless AI has the right data set to optimize from and the right arena to be able to make predictions, test those predictions, and continuously optimize them, right? And so not only is it going to need like the labs to do that, right, and the financial rails to allocate resources, but it's going to need to be fully open for it to move as fast as possible, right? And so like I think like everyone in DeSci is like data needs to be more open, right? But in order for that to be the case, it has to be maximally degen, right? Because you have to monetize somehow. And so the only thing you're left to monetize is the markets, right? And the trading. So if you're going to say, screw it, there's no data IP, like most of biotech is like, you keep your data close to your chest and you monetize the IP. We're like, no,
but that also slows progress, right? Like this is one of, everyone's hiding, all these big pharma are hiding their innovations and their breakthroughs, and it slows humanity down.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. And if we ever want to get to this world where we can just hang on the beach and AI does all the research for us, then you have to make it more open. You have to have the AIs compete against each other. The data has to be open so that they can continuously optimize their models. But then you have to make it maximally degen, right? Like it has to be fully accessible for anyone to put money into and trade, and the trading fees can then fund the research.
Which is just incredible innovations across the board, right? Like the fact that markets themselves can fund their own R&D is like an incredible concept, right? It's literally fees that are generated can drive investment in new products and services. It's just an incredible idea.
It's truly sustainable science, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
mm-hmm.
open,
mm-hmm.
right?
That's
so like
open.
I think everybody's been like, yeah, we need more opens, but like nobody has figured out the way to monetize when you have completely open research, because it's like you're giving away everything. Well, if you have the next banger longevity medicine, you want to open, and anyone can come and buy into it, then you want to open the data because it's marketing, right? Like you want people to see how good it is so that they can come and buy it. So
yeah, you can test it yourself. Like here's the open source data, but if you want, you can test it again. Why not?
Yeah, so the reason why all these biotechs hoard their data is because you can't go easily buy stock in that biotech company, right? And because that's such a process, and like it's so expensive, people just hoard their data close to their chest. So we envision this maximally like accelerated future that is only limited by the speed of ideas and the physical time it takes for like animals to be tested and die, right?
Yeah.
That is the only thing we want limiting the system, is like the physics, right?
And Benji, one thing I'll add before Jillian jumps in is like people often underestimate the ability of ideas that don't yet exist to exist, right? Like, people talk about science fiction a lot, and it's like, well, that's impossible until it happens, right? And I backed one of these innovations, right? Like the first cell-based meat company, Upside Foods, people told me it was ridiculous, it was insane, we couldn't grow lab-grown meat, it's impossible, there's no regulatory infrastructure for it. We backed these crazy founders, Uma Valetti, cut them a small check to start doing work. And, roughly 8 years later, all of a sudden, cell-based meat is real. It's approved in the US, right? People have eaten lab-grown chicken, right? Like these concepts. And so longevity meds, true longevity breakthroughs, not only do we know that they exist in the lab, like we know you can extend somewhere between 20 to 30% of lifespan of multiple organisms. We know this. It's fact, testable fact. And yet we're still sitting here dying of aging-related diseases when we know that there's things that can extend our healthy lifespan. Even if you don't want to live longer, I'm sure no one wants to get cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. Like no one wants that. No one wants to get frail and fall, break your hip, right? No one wants that. So, okay, you don't want to live longer, great, but I bet you want to be healthy all the way through.
And so, what are you
going to
do about it? And then like this, here's your chance. Here's your chance.
Well, I think too, like the reality of what you're touching on, Ryan, is like, and having like both of us having like worked for pharmaceutical companies, they treat you when you're sick. And so like what we're focused on is actually something totally different. Like we're focused on aging and longevity. And like our hopes is that by improving health span before you're sick, then you can have a better lifespan. And so like to me, even like the space that we're in is like fundamentally an area that's like I feel like we're starting to explore it, but it's like greatly underexplored because a lot is going into when you're already sick and like how do you treat the diseases? Well, what if you could just be healthier longer and maybe prevent some of those diseases from happening in the first place? So that's like probably a whole other conversation. But I think jumping back to like what Benji's saying, like, okay, if you're on a beach and this robot is going to bring you like the world's best longevity supplement, how do you get there? And like for us, when we think about backing into that, like really what we realized is like, and the vision all along, like we always said it was never just about the worms. Like it really was never just about the worms. But I think what we realized like after this whole, writing it up and also writing it down is like we need to help people understand that it was never about the worms. And how do you do that? Like we get them the product. And so a lot of what we're focused on in the interim is showing people this end-to-end vision. And certainly like when we started back at the beginning with Euro and Riff, like we had thoughts of what this vision looked like, and Riff is obviously like an antibiotic, so that's a bit different. But with urolithin A, for us, it's like there was always hopes of developing a product, and so in the near term, like we are making urolithin A available, a pump science urolithin A, and showing like this is the end game, right? The end game is these products, and not only that, but like we envision a world where, like to us, it's pump science, but I actually think it's like pump and science. Like to me, there's like the whole like mechanics of how, it's crypto powered research. And then the output is the science, but it's like the product. And so there's a world where there's like a pump science marketplace where anyone is going to buy these supplements. It could be, the person at your gym that has no idea actually that it was crypto power research. But the way that the model works, like connecting it end to end, is having that product, like a portion of those product sales go to buying back and burning the token. And so, like, to me, what we really hope to do in the near term is show people that vision by getting urolithin A in their hands. And like, I can't think of anything cooler than like one day. And I know you said you were someone who was like, had been on this journey with us, being like, what is going on with urolithin A? And it's like, oh my gosh, there's like, 10,000 orders a month of people buying urolithin A, and all of a sudden it's going to buy back and burn the token. Like that's the world we imagine. Like, and that's how we're going to get to not only like various products, but like a hero product where it's like, what are the top ingredients that should go in, the top compounds that should go into this ultimate longevity product that's delivered to you, and having, the market help us fund the research to find it and make it available, and then have people buy it. And then the buyback and burn goes to the token holders, right, who help support the research. So the biggest thing in the interim is like connecting that for people. Like it's never been about the worms ever. And like I think for crypto, we have always wanted there to be products that like underpin the crypto mechanics, and like this is it. Like we can actually do that. And how cool that like people who support the research, and get the data, and then there's a product, and the product can be like supported by hopefully the Web3 community. But there's a world where like there's a whole ecosystem of people that just want this supplement and the data and have no idea, hopefully have no idea like the mechanics that fund it. And hopefully they come in, and we've developed such a game where they're like, what is this? Like, I want to play. And that's what we envision. Like, that's how we're gonna, not only like get our community to see the end-to-end vision, but then onboard the next, 10,000, 100,000 people to DeSci. And by making a game super easy for people to understand, creating an engaging experience, and delivering products, right, that like onboard the next wave of people. And oh, by the way, help us all live longer, healthier lives. That's all with data that's transparent and out in the open for anyone to see. Like we're not, I think that's the thing that like is really cool is like we're not trying to, like when we think about even the supplement, like the data should speak for itself. Like you should be able to decide as you build your stack, or if when we have the Pump Science Hero product, like what are the best compounds. And I think best is also relative. Like maybe what I think is best versus what you think is best is different, and like really just putting the data out there for people to decide. But yeah, it's so much more than just these experiments. Like it's an end-to-end vision to get to these products and then bringing it back around, right, to like the token holders who funded the research and hopefully onboarding more people to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the killer thing is it's a new era, right, of consumer science products. It's actually that exists outside of crypto. And I think what we're seeing in the broader crypto ecosystem is it's time to stop being academic and like getting really excited about, oh, look at this really cool, refactoring thing that we made. Great. But when are you making real products, real services that actual people who couldn't care less about crypto use, right? And make people's lives better. And we've started to see that, right? And, it's happening in DeSci. It's just beginning in DeSci, but we've seen it happening in like consumer science products, right? And so we're going to be exploring that topic on how you make real products, real services to sell to people that benefits their lives. And so, and that's how you drive revenue. That's how you drive value. That's how stocks get value. I mean, stocks are they're equities that are going to soon be tokenized on the blockchain. I'm certain of it. Whatever BlackRock is doing down there in Texas with their 24/7 exchange, NASDAQ is going to be 24/7 in 2026. I wouldn't be surprised, Rebekka, if like it's on Solana, right? Because you need monolithic fast, probably running on FireDancer. For those of you that are not familiar, FireDancer is 1 million TPS, transactions per second. I think Visa, Rebekka, Visa is what?
60K.
60, there we go. 60K, like everything. And so for me, I think for all of us, what's exciting is actual real products. Yeah, I love crypto speculation. It's really fun. Memes are fun. But way more fun is building profitable businesses that make revenue, that drive value back to their investors. And we're going to see frameworks for this. And so what I'm excited about is the next era. We're clearly seeing the current administration is not anti-crypto in the US, right? And okay, now they're playing some weird, funny games, but like outside of that, like they are going to embrace crypto and tokenization, and it's going to change a lot. And so I know we've gone way over time, so I appreciate you all. So maybe last thoughts. Like, I don't know if there's any kind of last thoughts. Pump.science, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. There are a total of 20 new tokens coming. Is that right?
Yeah, we got 5 launched and I think 15 left, hopefully this month.
15 left. There's been lots of fun and games there, so you can check out all the drama online, but check out the data, most importantly. Totally. The data is really, really cool.
It is really cool. But hopefully there will be hundreds and thousands more coming, right? Like that's the idea. We're only going to find the magic molecule if we test a million of them. So we're going to have to get there. And so we're building the whole system to just be like basically pump fund for science experiments, right? Yeah, I guess maybe like final thoughts, building off what you're saying, Ryan, is like each of these blockchains is building their own economy, right? And I think that's so cool because it gives the opportunity to build products and bring them to the real world markets that couldn't have been built anywhere else. What is like can be funded through crypto and developed as a product that just isn't by the fiat system, right? The non-crypto system. And we think that this is a product line, right? New longevity medicines are not being produced by the existing biotech space.
Incumbents. No, not at all.
And there are some, like, I don't want to say like there's zero, like Ozempic is certainly a longevity medicine, right? That works. But it's like, this is like one of the first few that's ever been developed. It was super expensive and it's inaccessible for most people cost-wise, right? And so this is really an opportunity to make very, very accessible longevity medicines available to a vast majority of people and to do so in a super cost-efficient way and an open way that they can totally trust It's not data behind closed doors. It's not, papers published behind paywalls. It's like literally you can go download the CSV files of all and look at the raw videos if you want to like properly build trust. So anyway, I think like what's so cool about Solana and what's so cool about our integration with them is that we have the opportunity to bring a product line to the market that isn't going to get developed otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Couldn't agree more. Jillian?
Yeah, I think for me, like reflecting on, gosh, it's hard to believe it's only been 6 months, but I think just having the space and the technology to be able to even like develop what we're talking about right now is so wild to me. And like I even think about you touched on it a bit, Ryan, like there's so much going on with like the current administration in the United States. Like you want to talk about like a time for crypto and a time for DeSci. Like we're sitting at the intersection of such a movement, honestly. And like I think we saw it some with like mainstream media where it's like people no longer see mainstream media the same way that they did, and a lot of it has gone back to like independent journalists and trusting different media sources. And like I see the same thing, like there will always be a place for that type of science. And I think, for me it's just like really cool to give citizen scientists a substrate to actually do experiments in real labs. Like that is crazy to me. Like, and even I had a chat with Ethan of Curetopia this week myself. And like, I mean, when you think about like there's like different ways that you can think about like the power of longevity, but like there's no reason why, like when I think about the drug approval process, like a lot of times you work within the FDA guidelines, like there's even no reason why you couldn't start with like a supplement and then make it something that's like approved by the FDA. So I just feel like we're really playing in like, like I don't want to say white space, but like we have the power to like shape how science is done, shape how science is funded, shape how new supplements, potentially new treatments get to market. And it's all in a space that's underfunded and underexplored. And like, why not now? You know what I mean? And so I just feel like so grateful to be in a place where like with the Solana team and, with Molecule and Bio, and I just feel like there's like the right players in the space and the right support, and like we're gonna find it, and like we're gonna get back on that, like that upswing. And I don't know, I feel like this is the time. And like if it's not now, I honestly don't know when it is, because it's like AI is on the come up. So we have all the ingredients, we have all the pieces, we have all the players, we have all the momentum, and it's like just keep going. And I'm just grateful to be on this ride, grateful for our community who has rode with us. And I promise you, we're grinding day in and day out and are, committed to like pumping science, which is so much more than worms. It's like honestly a much bigger movement. And I'm just excited to get people to see and feel more of that. Because I think once, the next time someone's holding a bottle, it's going to be that urolithin A bottle. So just you watch out. Here it
I
comes.
can't wait to take it, by the way. I'm excited for it. So I'll be a customer. So Rebekka, final thoughts on this entire space.
Oh gosh. I love this like interactivity and this sort of like cyclical nature of, it's like you're saying, it's so much more than just worms, and the ability for new forms of patient engagement as well, and for people to really start getting involved, not just with the production of science in the very beginning in terms of helping fund it through this like really incredible new tokenization structure, but also participate through their own patient data and sharing things and, potentially trying out different compounds and also sharing their own experience and data in a entirely new way that hasn't been done before. And this sort of entirely new model that has not been able to exist previously because the technology just hasn't been able to support it. And luckily that we have something that is accessible and fast and cheap that can process this amount of data. And even with all of the research that can be funded in this entirely new and novel way with public engagement, then there's an entirely new possibility of like, well, other people can access that data and rework it and use it for other causes, and potentially help bolster their own research. And it's this net growth that is so much bigger than anything we can really comprehend at this stage, I think, especially once, this patient data and patient participation can get involved. And it's very, very early stages. It's really boggling to think. And now that there are these new changes and that there is this new sort of, especially sentiment in the U.S. I'm especially subjected to it because I'm here in New York helping grow the local ecosystem, and there is an insane amount of excitement and anticipation. And in May, we're having possibly the most important U.S. crypto event in New York. It's going to be absolutely enormous. Solana's hosting a 4-day, actual 5-day conference, 2 conferences called Accelerate. 2 of them are for developers and 2 of them are for just exploding our entire crypto ecosystem and bringing a lot of regulators and bringing a lot of really big names into our ecosystem to really talk about what is our long-term vision and how are we going to get there? How are we going to work with regulators and really innovative projects? We have a full DeSci day that is slowly coming together, DeSci Science Fair Day at the Solana office, and we're just going to continue grinding as we do every day, all day, for the future of our entire industry and especially for the future of DeSci, because it is so much more revolutionary than I think any of us fully can comprehend at this point.
And honestly, too, I gotta just say thank you, because there hasn't been a lot of times where people have proactively reached out to the DeSci community to say let's give DeSci, a floor, quite literally. And I just want to thank the Solana team, the super team, you, Ryan. I think a lot of people have played a really instrumental role in helping to advocate for DeSci behind the scenes and proactively do that. So just want to publicly thank you guys and the army of people behind you. But to have that, normally we're championing for that, and to have that be brought to us, it was whoa, this is so cool. So just thank you for making room for DeSci in the conversations. It hasn't always been easy, and it's just really cool to see it on the main stage.
Thank you as well. It takes an entire movement of people, right? And the fact that a lot of us have these various backgrounds, and we're all passionate about DeSci from different angles. But the people that really start understanding the power of it, I think it's so infectiously motivating and inspiring that there's no other way but forward. And so I'm personally just beyond honored that I can help participate in the budding beginnings of this movement that is just starting.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you for joining. We're on a journey, right? So science has been broken in many ways, and I think we're finding new ways to rebuild it using crypto rails, right? And I think that, this exploration, we're going back to science being anarchy. It was since its beginning, and we're about to start journeying back into that anarchy. I think we felt it with all the communities. And so very excited about new consumer products driven by science that are going to come out and all the innovations that are going to happen. The Solana ecosystem has helped a lot just with its scale. And so I'm really excited about all the innovations we can't even imagine today that are coming, the tokenizations that are going to come, the real companies that are going to launch, the real science that's going to be innovated. We're still super early. So thank you all. This is the end of DeSci Pilled again. We are on a journey, all of us, to discover the new frontier of science and crypto. Thank you again, and we'll have our next show very, very soon.